AI has been such a useful tool for us when it comes to productivity, efficiency, even when it comes to understanding our own selves better in terms of what do we need for our well-being. Recently, though, I've seen a trend that AI is also used when it comes to human relationships. And whether that is something that I am fond of or if it's something that I might want to refrain myself from, that is the subject of our podcast today in Who Do We Want to Be? And here with me, as always, is Abha. Good morning, Abha. How are you today?
Hi, Sabine. I'm really good. And I'm super excited to talk about this topic today because it's something we haven't delved into in a lot of depth. And I think it's really important to address. And really, the idea of talking about this came up when we started seeing a lot of research on how people are using these tools for relationships. And we saw one specific research that was cited in Psychology Today. There was a survey done for American singles. So it was geographically specific, but the range of people was really wide. So over 5,000 people were interviewed, and it was a generic study. And some of the questions were related to how they use AI for their relationships. And I just want to quote a few facts so that we can get in deeper into this conversation and just give a bit of context. So from the survey was all age ranges. So from 18 all the way to 98. So it had all different generations. 26% of these people thought that AI is making online dating much easier because the matches are better and it's easier to find people that are more connected purely because the algorithm is good. So this is actually not a bad thing. 41% of them said that they are using AI to help them start conversations, to make their profiles, to make their really good looking photos. But then when they're interacting with other people, they don't expect them to use AI because they feel like it's going to be dishonest. And their relationship will start off on a dishonest note, which is very curious because they're doing the same thing, which is also a little bit very strange of the human psychology. And the third and last stat that we thought was interesting is that 16% of respondents have engaged with AI as a romantic partner. And these are the younger audiences. So like 33% of those were Gen Zers and 23% of those were millennials. And then there was a 50-50% split. So 40% of the people interviewed said that having a relationship with an AI could actually be considered cheating. And then the other 40% said they don't agree with that. So very interesting stats. And if you go online, you will find lots of different articles and studies done about this. And I think here today we are having this conversation to explore what does this mean for us as real human beings in this world where we thrive on human relationships? I mean, we are social beings. We need human connection. We need social connection. Of course, everybody wants an emotional partner or a life partner. So how is AI affecting how we have our personal or romantic relationships?
It's a super fascinating topic, and thank you for sharing these stats. There were two things that were really standing out for me. And the first one was when you were saying that people use AI a lot to help them improve their profiles, but also they use AI as a conversation starter. And that worries me, to be very honest, because for me, that implies that people are not self confident enough to do this by themselves. So there is, again, a dependency that is building up that people need the confirmation or the support from AI rather than feeling good enough about themselves to go into a conversation or to even present themselves without the help of AI. So this is one thing that I see, and it really reminds me of the last episode that we did, Abba, where we said that people are using AI to give them feedback on how they are behaving. And this is starting this vicious circle where people are not very reflected. And they do feel they don't need to change their behavior because AI comforts them and, hey, you are doing the right thing and it's not you that is making a mistake. So, taking this to the next level of talking about human relationships, how do we want to be able to really engage into a human relationship when we are now used to even having relationships with AI. Because AI, in that sense, is made by us, right? AI has been written by us and it tells us what we want to hear. It gives us the compliments that we want. It builds us up when we need it. But it will most likely not criticize us. It will most likely not have a bad day. And it will most likely not challenge us in a way that a human counterpart would actually challenge us. So, what are AI relationships going to do to our capability of being with an unpredictable, real human being?
Yeah, it's like it's building a false reality. It's making us a bit delusional about what's real and what's not real. So while I totally am okay with getting AI's help to make you better, or because, for example, maybe you're not a good writer. And maybe writing a profile for you about who you are, what you do, what you are interested in. Maybe you're just not good at putting that down on paper. So you're not good at expressing that in writing. And therefore, when somebody reads your profile, it may not seem too attractive to them because the writing is not very good. Now, in this case, using AI to help you write, I don't have an issue with that, but then you have to be very careful that it really seems like you, because otherwise, when you go and actually meet this person and communicate with them, they're going to recognize that that's not how you speak and that's not how you write. So there's a difference between how you speak and how you write. And yeah, there is no criticism. There's no sense of reality. I have people come to me and say, oh, ChatGPT is my BFF, and we talk about everything and it tells me everything and it gives me opinions about everything. And it's so great that I have this tool as my BFF. And I really struggle listening to that. And when it comes to romantic partners, that just goes to a whole different level, which is what we're here to discuss. So it's so complex and it's so nuanced because where is the line? When should we use AI in the right way? And when do we need to stop? And what's acceptable and what's not acceptable? I think it's a very gray area. And I also think it's very personal. But I think you have to be aware of how you're using it so that you don't go down this hole of living in delusion.
Mhm. Yeah, I think delusion is a fantastic word in this context. When we think about human psychology and the actual need for relationships, for one, it's because we want to be taken care of by someone. We want to feel that we belong to someone, we want to be safe with someone, and we want to know that person is doing everything so that I can feel safe. So that's the very original understanding of why we have relationships. And then, of course, it's also vice versa, right? So it's not just that I am being taken care of, but I am also taking care of somebody else. So that includes that I understand somebody that well, that I know what they need in this particular moment. I am here when they are not feeling well. I am here to comfort them when they need me, and so on and so forth. So, this is one extremely crucial part of human relationships and our need for human relationships. But the other part is, and even when we look into, the hormones that our bodies produce and need to produce for survival, one of them is oxytocin. And oxytocin is the hormone that is being produced when we are touching someone, when we are hugging someone, when we are embracing someone. And that is a very, very crucial part for our psychological well being. When you look into the development of children, for example, they only grow well when their body can produce and release a certain amount of oxytocin every day. And that means they can only develop well when they are being hugged and touched by a loved person multiple times a day. So it's aspects of these that are taken for granted in, let's say, successful human relationships that are completely missing when we are looking into engaging into a relationship with an AI. I understand that, especially young women or men, because you were saying the biggest chunk here is Gen Z, when they are enjoying being with an AI companion, especially when that AI companion is giving them all of the comfort, giving them all of the compliments, is making them feel good. But what is really missing is that very existential part of relationships, which is taking care of one another and also feeling the touch, because that is crucial for our existence, really. So, what does this do, this lack of these two extremely important components, to the overall understanding of a relationship and the necessity of a relationship with a human being?
I think as we've completely moved online, obviously post-COVID, where everything now is acceptable online, it's really brought this up because you're absolutely right. I mean, I myself often choose, and I'm not talking about romantic relationships, but just relationships in general, choose to have online calls because it's a better use of my time, whether it's a friend or business. But the truth is, we need to recognize that, especially when it's a friendship, no matter what type of friendship it is, in real life needs to be focused on because it's totally different having these relationships with a person, let alone with an AI online, because we're having relationships online via Zoom and stuff, which are already taking away the human connection, the human touch, the human component of giving your friend a hug when you see them. And then when we go to AI to further any relationship, we're totally missing out on not only the real human perspective, but also the physical connection perspective. So it's actually going a level deeper into disconnecting from real people, which is really worrying. And I think this is quite generic throughout the board when it comes to incorporating a tool into our lives, right? We need to be very conscious of how we are incorporating a tool into our life and how is that affecting us as a human. And this is why we really started this podcast, right? To talk about all these things, because while AI is very good on its own, unless we really use our human intelligence to make sure that we're taking the best of these tools, we are still growing as individuals and as people in a real society and not just one that we fabricated online with people that may or may not be real, or like with a chatbot like ChatGPT that's not real. And another layer is coming in these chatbots now, like Grok, for example, has introduced personalities where you can pick a personality and you may not be looking for anything romantic or friendship or a companion while you're using a tool like Grok, which is the equivalent of ChatGPT, but by X.com. You might just end up engaging with this personality and start building a connection with them because, as you said, they're perfect. They know exactly what to say. They know exactly how to react to you. They know exactly how to validate your feelings, how to make you feel good. And it is very worrying. It is worrying. And I don't have the answers, but I do think, especially as we enter this AI first world, we need to stop and reflect and just make sure that any tool we incorporate into our lives is done with intention and purpose. And also, not only for ourselves, but for our children, because they are going to grow up in a world where this is going to become just so normal that it's all blurring. And if we don't take a step soon, I actually worry about the future.
I think the key word that you mentioned here, Abba, is intention. Just like we spoke about intention earlier on in our podcast, whenever we discussed new tools that were available, what is our intention for using them? And if I think of an intention of having AI as a companion, I understand the intention of not feeling alone in a particular moment, which is absolutely fine, looking for comfort. But if I'm looking at the intention of building a real relationship, I'm wondering in how far having a relationship or friendship with an AI is counterproductive to being able to have a real relationship later on. Because as we said earlier, my AI companion is programmed the way that I want him or her to be. they are reacting exactly the way that I want him or her to be. So now let's imagine that I am now missing the real human interaction, everything that we've discussed already. Now I want to go for a real relationship. How did my perception of the qualities that I'm looking for change, for example? How did my ability to cope with someone who is moody or to cope with someone who is not perfect the way that I was expecting now that I had an AI companion for a longer time? How am I able to cope with that? And what does that do to the quality of that relationship with a real human? So I believe that this intention is really extremely important to keep in mind. Let's call it that longer term understanding of what relationships are and should be when it comes to using these AI companions.
And I think the lines are really blurred because you might be listening to this today and saying, oh, that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. I'm just going to use it while I can, and then I'll be fine. Like it's fine for now, and I'll be fine. But the truth is, once you start getting emotionally connected, which we will, because like you said, they're so perfect and they're so amazing, and they're giving you those dopamine hits when you need them. In that, and I'm not a psychologist, and this is not my area of expertise, but what I do know is that when you're emotionally connected to anything, your rational mind does not work very well. So when does your emotional connection to whatever relationship you're having on with ChatGPT or any other tool, take over your rational side and then not help you think straight anymore? It is something we have to be very, very aware of, because the truth is, if we stop focusing on in real life relationships, it's going to be very easy for us to get the dopamine hits that we need from tools. But then when we go out into the real world, whether it's for friendship, companionship, or even business, I feel like we're not going to be able to have the emotional intelligence to communicate with real people because we've kind of lost it on the way. And this is something we really need to be careful of as we are using these tools. And again, the only way we can use these tools to help us is if there's a healthy amount of human intelligence that stays on top of it. And that, again, is the whole premise of this podcast. So I hope when you use these tools, you keep that in mind. And as you said, Sabine, don't stop asking yourself, what is my intention right now? And if you feel yourself getting too friendly with a tool like ChatGPT, maybe you found a personality on Grok and you're like, she's so fun or he's so fun and I'm really enjoying this banter, recognize it and stop and be like, why are you enjoying this banter with something that's not real? So as we enter this AI first world in which there are so many benefits and we're going to be able to grow and develop as human beings in ways that we never imagined, there is also a dark side that we need to be very careful of, because what we don't want is artificial intelligence to take over our human intelligence and disconnect us from what we know that is real. So as you are entering this AI first world, let's all be conscious of this and really focus on how can we combine our human intelligence with artificial intelligence to get the most benefit from it and avoid the worst of it. And that's really the premise of this podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today, and we'll see you again next week.